the thing that Alex mentioned about the positive, absolutely true. Hated negativity, which I picked up on myself. In fact, if he could be annoyingly positive, he could be.
Yeah.
He would, any work project that you could see was going to take half a day, he'd say, I'll have this done in a half hour. You can't install that storm door in half an hour. It was over and over again like that, that kind of thing, that unrealistic, but it was never negative. It was always positive. I can do it. I can do it better and faster than the next guy. And he's probably the best negotiator any of us have ever met about money.
He would negotiate the tip.
Yeah.
Fill him in on that.
Even up until a year ago, he was negotiating actual items on the menu
In a restaurant?
in a restaurant. Oh, that flounder for $13.99, complete dinner. Is that the cash price?
A lot of people don't want to admit that, I can get the senior discount now, and if I take the train, I do. But it was all about the senior discount, wherever, the movies, the diner. What about the price for seniors? That's gotta be cheaper.
The way that we would negotiate where we'd go is if we'd say, well, we'll go to the diner if you guys pay, but if you want us to pay, we're picking the place.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
He's always looking for the early bird.
That's another thing they would negotiate.
I think the brother should get up.
Yeah. So you enjoyed many early bird dinners with him?
My brother, he had a skill. He knew exactly where the early birds were. Wherever we went, he was very clever. He was a smart guy. He really was.
Was he always smart and clever and
He was.
a good
I
negotiator,
think he was a
positive
better-
when he was a little one?
He was a better student than I was. I remember he got very high marks in mathematics, and I hated maths. But he was a good guy, I mean, he was also like a rival, because we grew up together, and
Did you share a bedroom?
we shared a bedroom. That's right, we shared a bedroom. And we shared the same bed, as a matter of fact. Because we didn't have that much at that time, so we shared the same bed. And then when we grew up, we were rivals, we were like competing for the pretty girls. He usually got.
I think that was a tie.
We had a lot of fun.
We drove to Florida a lot, got into a lot of trouble in Florida.
Yeah.
Spent
He
way
was
too
a
much
good
time
guy.
in Florida.
He really was.
That's
What
they
kind
did.
of car did he have?
An old one, I'm sure.
No, Harold
always had a
Harold
really
always
nice
had new
car.
cars.
Yeah.
When they were young, though. I don't think they
Oh, when they were younger, yeah.
So he was my brother.
What kind of car did you have when you guys used to drive to Florida?
I had a car. I once took that car out to.
I can picture a big red Cadillac, was it?
No, I don't know
Model
what it
T or
was.
something. It was-
It was old and rusty. We drove out there and to get it. I wanted to get my license. So I went out there, and the inspector puts his foot in the car, and his foot went right through the floor.
This is not a red Cadillac.
The Flintstones.
Checked his car right to the junkyard. We didn't pass the inspection. I didn't get my
Well, we get
license.
the Fred Flintstone kind of car. We
Oh,
just
you didn't get
brought
your
it up.
license? You told me that.
Yeah, finally I had it.
So did you go to Miami Beach when you were in Florida?
Oh, yeah, I went to Miami and Palm Beach, all over the place. But, we even worked on the gambling casinos. Yeah, really, yeah. Well, he would just, we did whatever they told us to do, you know, and it was nice. We had a good time. And then when he got married, I felt like I lost my best friend. You know, he was my buddy.
Wedding must have been difficult, happy but difficult.
Yeah, well. He got married very young.
That's a great story.
Yeah, well, that's about all I
Yeah.
can say.
That's a good thing.
But he was a good guy. He was a good
Let me ask one question, just pulling it back to a more serious note for a moment. Did he have any regrets in life?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I don't know, if he did, he didn't tell me. You know, to tell you the truth, he was like very, he was sort of private in a way. I mean, he wouldn't,
Jimmy, maybe I can comment on that. I mean, he was upset, you know, with Larry, you know, the marital problems and that sort of thing, I think, hurt him very much. And then Larry had subsequent marriage to another person who really wasn't, in my opinion, wasn't worthy of him. And I'm sure those
You're not alone, Bernard.
were very, I'm sure, impacted him in a very bad way, you know. You know, so I just made a few notes for myself because I didn't know how
Good.
I'd have missed that. So, I mean, he had a significant influence on my life, even though he was about 10 years older than me. And because of this age difference, he didn't interact with me very much. I mean, he was out, like Al says, they were with girls and doing what young people do, you know, getting into fights. We'll talk about that. Anyway, he got married very young. He was 20 years old, and he left with his wife, Ethel. And they moved to Chicago, and then...
They were moved to Chicago.
Right, and then to Elkhart, Indiana. I didn't know if he would ever come back. But I do remember of some of the things, some images from him before he left, you know. I have an image of him, he was in the kitchen chewing gum, making his own ice cream. I saw him as a scientific one. And and then he was using big words to describe what he was doing, you know. And I said, gee, I would like to have a big vocabulary like him. So he sort of motivated me. My parents, they came from the old country and they were very intelligent, but I didn't appreciate how smart they were till later on. Now I really realizing what they've accomplished, but I look to my brothers as being the cool ones. They're the ones who fitted into this world, to this society, and so they were my models. And although they were, Al is 12 years older than me, and Al is 10, so they didn't have that much, but I do have some imagery. And then we lived in a working class neighborhood in East New York, Brooklyn. It was kind of rough. It probably still is a rough area. And there were times, even when he did run around a lot, he was there for me, you know. Like I remember one time a kid was, he beat me up. You know, so I went back into the house. I said, Harold, this kid beat me up. He said, go back there and fight him again. So he made me go up there. And then on the second time, I had no better luck than on the first time. So he had to pull me out. So this didn't do too much for my self-image, but it did help me in the long run. You know, I had to deal with, you know, the neighborhood you live in. And eventually, I did manage to, you know, fight and win some fights, you know. So, you know, you have to, in a rough neighborhood, you know how to defend yourself. It wasn't like a neighborhood, you know, with knives and so on. But, you know, people had fights, you got beaten up, but it wasn't as bad as it got later on. And anyway, then that's what I remember from before he left. Then they moved out to the Midwest, and he became a very good salesman. I mean, he was really good at what he did, you know. And I remember he would send me gifts. I remember he sent me a harmonica, but he was always sending me, he sold encyclopedias. So I guess whenever he could, he would mail me different editions of them. And I would read a lot, you know, I couldn't read it page to page, but whatever was interesting, and the pictures were amazing, We didn't have computers then, of course, so these were fascinating to me to read the, what was interesting in these encyclopedias, and it was, I'm sure it helped me improve my vocabulary, which is one of my goals. And then when he and Ethel came back east to live in New Jersey, I was in my first marriage then, and I needed a job. And, he and a couple of his partners established a good business. I mean, they had, I forget, it was along Route 46. I forget, its name starts with an R. I forget. Rahway's down south, right? But anyway, it was a town. He had a factory there, and at the time, they even manufactured their own aluminum awnings. And so I got a job, and he took me on as a salesman, and it was rough. I was a shy person. I had to knock on doors, people slamming doors in my face, and so on. But finally, I was able to make leads, and he was the one. I couldn't close any sales. I mean, I wasn't, but he had a charisma about him. He knew how to make sales, and he could influence people. Using usual techniques. Well, we're going to use your house as a model, and then we're going to give you a special break. Now you don't mind. People coming by your house and looking at your window, do you? No, you don't mind. He would shake his head and get them to shake their head. He would use head nods and motions to get to influence people. But I mean, of course, the first instinct you think is, well, he's a salesman. He takes money and forgets it. No, he was very good. If the people had any complaint, any problem, he would follow up on it and made sure that his contractors fixed it so that the customers were happy. And eventually, before I left I never became as good as him. I left his employment, but I did make a couple of closings myself, and it really helped me. And this was good for my life experience, because in other times in life where you're working, people can be abusive, verbally. And this got me out of my shyness. I could express myself and, assert myself. And so finally, I remember he, as a caring husband, father, he cared everything for his kids, and everything he could do to support his kids and his grandkids. That's my memories.
Thank you. Sure. They were there first. When I was 5 years old, and I rode my tricycle up to the corner to their house on Chittenden Road, and I think it was Larry that tried to charge me a penny toll for going, for going over the property line. And of course, I didn't have any change on me, but we became friends anyway, notwithstanding my failure to pay the toll. So I've known them for 62 years now. And what I remember about Harold, and what I miss especially about Larry, is, let me go back to after Larry's passing last year. Larry and I used to send emails to each other, and a lot about politics, about what was happening in the world, and also, silly things that would happen in the news, like man marries skunk, now wants annulment. Something like that. He'd send me, and I'd send him back the same thing. And it wasn't The Onion, it was a real story. Anyway, Larry and I shared politics, and he went with my daughter and I to the march against the war in Iraq in 2003, that big one in February 2003. And Harold shared my political viewpoints. In coming of age in the mid and late 60s, there were very few adults with whom I could talk politics and have somebody reflect back to me what was going on without having to explain myself or explain the antecedents to what I believed. So when I came back from the St. Mark's bookstore one night after a concert at the Fillmore and had a book on the military-industrial complex by Sidney Lenz of some New Left review in New York City, Harold knew of the guy and knew of the term and knew of the concepts, which at the time was relatively new and rather leftish. I mean, now it's come into the political parlance pretty regularly, especially in the 70s and 80s. But back then in 1968, it was a new, 69, it was a new term. And Harold and I and Larry, and Stephen was there too, but he wasn't as much into it as Larry and Harold and I were. But I could talk politics with Harold with ease. And that's because he had a real kind of a new left a vision about things. I don't know how that came about, but
I was going to ask, how did it come about?
I don't know, but at the time in '68, I recall being at their house the night of the Democratic Convention, and the yippies in the park were getting pummeled by the Chicago police. And Harold was enraged by that and upset by that and was taking the student side, which my parents would have said, those SOB kids, hit them harder.
Judge Hoffman.
Yeah, exactly. My parents and most of the parents of the day were, if not Nixon people, maybe we were George Wallace people, but they were at least in camp with, they were the silent majority, And Harold wasn't in that place at all. And I really appreciated that about him. And that's what I remember most about him, being able to talk politics freely with him without censoring, and feeling understood back and forth when we talk about that.
And whom did you see at the Fillmore that night before you went to the...
Oh my, probably the Grateful Dead. Yeah, right, I don't know. Some. Those are the
Like my parents, my father came from Poland, and my mother came from Moldavia. I mean, and they had very, very difficult lives. And my father, for example, he had to leave his family. His father chased him out, and because, look, I can't feed you. So he had to work as an apprentice. He was in Switzerland, and he wound up in Germany during World War I. So he was working in my father was working in a munitions factory. Well, he had many jobs there, but one of them was working in a munitions factory. And then, while his brother, Eli, was in America already, fighting in the American Army, and he was even wounded, shot in the side. I always thought to myself, I wonder, it'd be ironic if a bullet that my father manufactured there shot his own bullet.
Yeah.
But to get back, my father saw very interesting things, which we could talk a lot about, but he was in Germany, which wasn't bombed during World War I, wasn't bombed at all during World War I. This physical structure was intact, but the people were in arms. They felt that they were betrayed, that they were told to go to war against other workers, and only the rich people benefited from it. And so he was there during a time, the Spartacus Revolution, where it was a left-wing revolution, where he was disarming police as long as other people. They didn't hurt the police. So,
Wow.
so he saw all that, the hunger, where he had to steal food from a pig, in order to survive, and do things like that. And then there was ration cards during World War I in Germany. Fortunately, he had a friend who met a rich girlfriend, and he didn't need it, so he's able to get 2 loaves of bread a day. And on my mother's side also, they were lucky in Moldavia to have 2 meals a day, and they were better, and they were considered pretty good off. So, when they came to this country, that formed this kind of, coming from the how should we say, the oppressed classes, helped make them suspicious of government and maybe capitalism also. So that's what helped form Harold's point of view.